Vanessa observed the small wrinkles beginning to form around her eyes in the bathroom mirror. At 42, her face still held its usual vivacity, but there was something different in her gaze, a weariness that wasn't just physical. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision she had made. On the bathroom sink, neatly folded, was the third version of the divorce letter she had written to Wesley. The other two had been torn up during moments of hesitation, but this time would be different. 15 years of marriage would come to an end after dinner that night. Vanessa and Wesley had met in architecture school. He was brilliant, charismatic, with a natural talent for creating spaces that told stories. She, methodical and detail-oriented, complemented his style with technical precision. Together, they had dreamed of opening their own architecture firm one day. Life, however, took a different path. After the birth of Aidan, now 12 years old, Wesley secured a prominent position at a large construction company, while Vanessa continued working as a university professor. The routine settled in, comfortable and predictable, until nearly a year ago, when Wesley lost his job during a company restructuring. "It's going to be okay," he had said that night with a forced smile. "It's only temporary." But the days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and Wesley withdrew into a silence that Vanessa could no longer penetrate. He spent hours sitting in the armchair near the living room window, with a cup of coffee growing cold between his fingers, his gaze lost in the urban landscape. He sent out resumes, attended interviews, but always returned with the same distant look. The 3-bedroom apartment on the 10th floor, once a cozy family refuge, had turned into a space of unspoken silences. The walls Wesley so admired for their natural lighting now seemed silent witnesses to the gradual distance growing between them. Vanessa came out of the bathroom with the letter in hand, putting it in her purse. She needed to meet Cynthia first, her friend of 2 decades, the only one who knew about her decision. The cafe downtown was busy that afternoon. Cynthia was already waiting for her at the corner table, with her characteristic red scarf and short grey hair. A retired literature teacher, Cynthia had the kind of wisdom that comes not only from books, but from lived experiences. "So today is the day," said Cynthia, not as a question, but as a statement, when Vanessa sat down. "Yes," Vanessa replied, feeling a tremor in her voice. "I can't stand living with a stranger anymore. Wesley is physically present, but emotionally, it's like he's on another planet." Cynthia took a sip of her tea before responding. Her eyes, behind her colourful frame glasses, seemed to see beyond Vanessa's words. "Do you remember when you met Wesley? What captivated you the most about him?" Vanessa smiled slightly, recalling. "His passion for life, how he was a good man, and the way he spoke to me, as if he really saw me." "And do you think that man has completely disappeared?" Vanessa hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe. Unemployment changed everything. He refuses to talk about how he feels, acts as if he can solve everything on his own. When I try to get closer to him, he distances himself even more." "Wesley has always been proud, independent," Cynthia observed. "For a man who built his identity around providing and creating, losing his job is not just a financial matter." "I understand that," Vanessa interrupted. "But why can't he share this with me? Why these months of silence, of withdrawal? Sometimes I think he doesn't love me anymore." Cynthia placed her hand over Vanessa's, a simple yet comforting gesture. "If you do this now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life," she said softly, but firmly. "He's down, but he's still the same man. He's just lost." Vanessa felt a pang in her chest. How can I help someone who doesn't want to be helped? Sometimes, the greatest act of love isn't speaking, but listening. It's not acting, but being present, Cynthia responded. "Before you close the door, make sure you've tried to open all the windows." The way back home was long for Vanessa, despite the short physical distance. Cynthia's words echoed in her mind, mingling with memories of the good times with Wesley. The wedding day, Aidan's birth, the celebration when they bought the apartment. The trip to the beach last summer when, for a brief moment, they seemed happy again. Upon opening the apartment door, Vanessa expected to find Wesley in the living room, as usual. Instead, the place was dark and silent. Aidan had gone to sleep over at a friend's house, which would give the necessary privacy for the difficult conversation she planned to have. It was then that she noticed a sliver of light coming from the bedroom. She approached slowly, feeling her heart race. Through the half-open door, she saw Wesley sitting on the floor, leaning against the bed. In his hands, an old photograph, Aidan at 3 years old, smiling in his father's lap during a park outing. What surprised her most was not the photo, but the silent tears running down Wesley's face. In 15 years of marriage, Vanessa had seen him cry only twice, at their son's birth and at his father's funeral. Now there he was, sobbing like a child, his shoulders hunched under the weight of something he had carried alone for too long. Vanessa felt her own heart break. For a moment, she stood paralyzed at the door, uncertain about what to do. The divorce letter seemed to weigh tons in her bag. Without thinking much, she entered the room and sat silently beside Wesley. He didn't try to hide the tears or pretend he was okay, as he had done so many times in the past months. He just looked at her, his red eyes revealing not just sadness, but exhaustion, fear, and a vulnerability he had long hidden. Vanessa said nothing. She just placed her hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of presence, and Wesley cried even more, as if that touch had broken an invisible dam. "I'm sorry," he finally spoke, his voice choked. "For everything." "For what exactly?" Vanessa asked softly. Wesley took a deep breath before answering. "For being a failure. For not getting a job. For not being the husband and father you all deserve." Vanessa felt a wave of understanding wash over her. All these months, while she interpreted Wesley's silence as indifference or lack of love, he was drowning in guilt and shame. "I have been trying so hard," Wesley continued, looking at the photo. "I send resumes every day, attend interviews, but nothing happens. With each no, I feel like I fail you all again. Why didn't you talk to me about it?" He gave a sad smile. "How could I? You're handling everything on your own. The bills, Aidan, the house. I should be your partner, not your burden. You even mentioned how much I was frustrating you." Vanessa froze, remembering how hard she was also being during this difficult process. "Wesley, look at me," Vanessa asked, placing her hand on his face. "You're not a burden. You never were. We are a team, remember?" Something in those words seemed to reach Wesley in a way nothing else had over the past months. He met her eyes, and for a moment, Vanessa glimpsed again the man she had fallen in love with. "I thought you were despising me," he admitted, "that you were too disappointed to talk about it." Vanessa felt a pang of guilt. "I was hurt by your silence. I thought you didn't trust me anymore, that you didn't love me anymore." "How could I not love you? You are the best part of my life along with Aidan," Wesley replied. "That's precisely why I'm so afraid of disappointing you both." That night, sitting on the bedroom floor, Wesley and Vanessa talked like they hadn't in years. He spoke about the humiliation he felt during job interviews, the despair of watching their savings dwindle, the fear of not being able to support the family. He confessed that many mornings he pretended to go out for interviews when, in fact, he would walk through the park for hours, trying to organize his thoughts and gather the courage to try again. Vanessa, in turn, admitted that she had also shut down. Instead of showing her support, she had harbored resentments and unspoken expectations. She recognized how, gradually, she began to see Wesley as an adversary rather than a partner in the same struggle. "I almost—" she began hesitantly, thinking about the letter in her purse. "Almost what?" Wesley asked. Vanessa shook her head. "It doesn't matter now. What matters is that we're talking again." While Wesley was making tea in the kitchen, a small ritual he had abandoned in recent months, Vanessa discreetly took the divorce papers out of her purse and tore them into small pieces, throwing them in the bathroom trash. She felt immense relief, as if a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. The next morning, Vanessa woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and toasted bread, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. She found Wesley in the kitchen preparing breakfast. "Good morning," he smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his eyes. "I thought I'd start the day differently." Vanessa smiled back, feeling a renewed sense of hope. It's a great start. In the weeks that followed, the changes were subtle but consistent. Wesley began attending a support group for unemployed professionals suggested by Vanessa. There, he discovered he wasn't alone in his feelings and learned strategies to cope with the situation. Vanessa, in turn, suggested that they revive the old dream of opening their own office. Perhaps it was the right time to take the risk. He hesitated, but after a silence he agreed. "We can try." They started planning together, began slowly. They took freelance work, made budgets, improvised an office in the living room. It wasn't glamorous. Many clients said no. Money was tight, and the nights turned into a series of coffee and spreadsheets. But 3 months later, when they signed the contract for their first entirely own project, a small renovation for a cafe, Wesley looked at Vanessa and smiled, in that way she hadn't seen in years. "I think we're on the right path." She agreed. This time it was different. It wasn't just an old dream, it was a bet they were willing to make together. They managed to rent a small room to welcome potential new clients. One afternoon, while they were organizing the new space, Aidan was helping to set up some shelves. Vanessa watched her husband and son working together, talking and laughing. Wesley looked 10 years younger, his eyes once again sparkling with purpose and hope. "You know what I sometimes think," Wesley said, approaching Vanessa while Aidan went to grab more tools from the car. "That night, when you found me crying in the bedroom, if you had simply turned around and walked away." Vanessa shuddered at the thought of the torn letter and the different path their lives could have taken. "But I didn't leave," she replied, squeezing his hand. "I stayed." "Why?" he asked, genuinely curious. Vanessa thought of Cynthia and her wise words that had changed everything. "Because someone reminded me that sometimes, when a person is at the bottom of a pit, they don't need someone to immediately pull them up. Sometimes they just need someone willing to climb down and sit beside them until they find the strength to rise." Wesley held her tightly, and Vanessa felt in his heartbeat the certainty that she had made the right decision. Their love hadn't disappeared during those difficult months. It had just hidden behind walls of silence and pain that neither dared to share. That afternoon, as they watched the new office space take shape, Vanessa thought of the metaphor Wesley always used about architecture. It wasn't just about building walls and ceilings, but about creating spaces where people could feel good. Perhaps relationships were like that too, not just about happy moments and declarations of love, but about building a safe space where two human beings could be vulnerable together, weather storms, and yet still find their way back to each other. Aidan returned with the tools, interrupting her thoughts. The boy was smiling, excited about the family's new venture. Vanessa looked at the two men in her life and knew, with absolute certainty, that closed doors are sometimes just invitations to open windows that reveal much broader horizons. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.